Derrick Pitts, Chief Astronomer at the Franklin Institute Science Museum, Planetarium Programs Director. It's me, your cool astronomer, welcoming you back to another edition of Night Skies at Home, the Franklin Institute's at-home astronomy program that helps familiarize you with the night skies. We want you to be adept at figuring out what's up there, what you can see, and we're happy to give you all the information you need. And this particular edition is for this month, the month of March 2023. We're glad you can be with us tonight. We hope you'll enjoy our program. How do you like my background view here? Isn't that cool? Well, this is actually the Orion space capsule over here on this side in a photograph of its recent orbital flight around the moon. Recent? Well, it was really last August, but it was a test of the SLS launch system and the Orion capsule that are going to be used as part of the Artemis program to send astronauts back to the moon in 2025. So that's what that image is. Pretty good, huh? I wish I could have been out there, but this will have to do for right now. In any case, welcome to our program this evening. Again, this is the March 2023 edition of Night Skies at Home, the Franklin Institute's astronomy program that hopes to connect you with the night sky. Let us know where you're listening to our program, watching our program from. We'd love to find out where you're enjoying the night sky, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about your night sky. Here in Philadelphia, unfortunately, the sky is overcast. It was like that last night. It's overcast tonight. It's going to be overcast tomorrow night. Hopefully skies will be better where you are. So let us know where you are and let us know what your skies are like. If you would please welcome my studio producer here, Linda. She's over here in the corner. Say hi, Linda.
Hi, everybody.
There she is right there. She's going to be helping us with the program this evening here in the studio. And our technical producer, Katie, is way out in cyberspace someplace, helping us with all the other technical details. She's in the background there. Thanks, Katie. Greatly appreciate it. Okay, so what are we up to this evening? Here's what we're up to this evening. We're going to talk about the sky phenomenon for this month. That's the sunrise, sunset, the moonrise, moonset times, those kinds of things, when the phases are, and what constellations are going to be visible in the night sky this month, as well as what other really cool astronomical things might be available. A little bit of astro news, just to catch you up on a few things. But our main topic this evening is science fiction and science. You probably have a favorite science fiction book or a favorite science fiction story. We'd like to find out what that is, and we'd also like to find out what is the science, the seed of science that makes that story go as a science fiction story. So we're looking for real science here. I'll give you some examples of some books I like, and I'm really going to depend on you to help me out with this, and I'll tell you why. So I'm an old school science fiction guy. That means I really enjoy science fiction that is space related, typically about space travel or about space situations on other planets and other parts of the galaxy, that sort of thing. Aliens, maybe a little bit, but not so much, but more about what that future of spacefaring might be like, where everybody can zip around the galaxy or zip around the universe without much effort. This is where we ignore the, all the concepts about how big space is and the limiting physics and all that sort of stuff. But I'll give you some examples of that as we go on. I'll go along, all right? So figure out your favorite science fiction book and let us know what that is. Okay, great. So, Linda, what do we have this evening from, wow, check it out. We have folks from Philly here, from South Jersey, from Boston. Hello, Boston. From Holland, Pennsylvania, from Michigan City, Indiana, and from Delaware. Wow, all up and down the East Coast. That's great. And I hope your weather is better where you are than it is here, because there's something in particular I want you to look for in the night sky. So everybody else listening, let us know where you're from. Also, we love your astronomy questions. If you have a question about astronomy or space exploration, please give us that information. Let us know what that question is, because we love hearing your questions. We know you're curious about the night sky, and we'd love to find out what it is that you find really exciting and what you find really curious and what piques your curiosity about the night sky. So let us know what your questions are. Okay, great. Glad you're with us tonight. Let's get rolling here with the program. Let's start out with science phenomenon. That's, sky phenomenon. What's happening in the sky for the month of March? So I think one of my favorite things about what's happening at the end of February, at the beginning of March, is the fact that we're gaining more hours of daylight every day. I think right now we're up to about 11 hours and 11 minutes of sunshine, or of daylight, really. And that's wonderful. And that's going to continue to increase as we move towards spring and move on towards summer, of course. Sunrise right now, you ready for this, tomorrow morning, is 6:30 a.m. 6:30 a.m. And sunset is now at 5:54 p.m. Sunset's at 5:54. Sunrise is now at 6:30 a.m. So we're getting all the extra time we need. We're gaining about 2.5 minutes a day right now. So as that continues, you're really going to begin to notice it. I'm sure you've already noticed it on the sunset end of the day, but you'll start to notice it on the sunrise end of the day too. So that's where we are. So we've got that going on, and we have more sunlight to come, and that's great. The moon right now is a waxing gibbous moon. I want you to notice something really interesting about our programming and the lunar cycles. You ready for this? This is kind of really interesting how this has worked out. This year, our program is always, of course, on the first Thursday night of the month. And here we are on March 3rd, March 2nd it is. And as it turns out, we have come into synchronicity with the lunar phases. That is that almost every one of our programs this year is going to occur when the moon is in a waxing gibbous phase. It's interesting how we've managed to slide around to that point. Now, we've been doing the program on the first Thursday night of every month for a little while now. But what's actually been happening is that the lunar phasing has been shifting through the course of the year. So for our program, we've had the same lunar phase for every program. It's just that the phase is different because that phasing slides around the calendar. So we've stayed fixed in time, but the lunar phasing has shifted. So this year, we're going to be waxing gibbous almost the entire year. We'll see how that progresses as the year goes on, and we'll be able to follow that. It's kind of an interesting thing that we've synced up with the mechanics of the solar system. All right, so the moon rose today at 4:10 a.m. Moon rises at 4 o'clock in the morning. And it's set this afternoon at 1:07 p.m. So we'll get a little bit of a shift of that tomorrow, and we'll see how that goes. I see we have Donna is, if I'm reading this correctly, can you see this, Linda? We have a question there. I think it's up on the screen. Oh, I see.
Donna wants to know what's up with the moon a few nights ago. It seemed very low to the ground and bright.
Donna, thanks for that question. What was up with the moon a few nights ago? It seemed very low to the ground and very bright. And you must have seen the moon early in the, oh, wait a minute. I was going to say you must have seen the moon early in the evening, but if it was low to the ground and very bright, well, the only thing I can say on that, Donna, is that you must have seen it just as it was rising or just as it was setting. That's the only way it can be low to the ground. But very bright, sure, because it's reflecting a lot of light from the sun. But because it's in a waxing gibbous phase right now, it's setting at 1:07 in the afternoon. So, you might be able to see it in the morning still after sunrise over on the western side of the sky. You might catch it that way too. Okay, so we were just saying that the moon is at waxing gibbous phase. It rose today at 4:10. It's set this afternoon at 1:07. And full moon is next Tuesday. That would be March the 7th. And new moon comes on March 21st. March 21st is when the next new moon is. Okay, so the other thing that's going to happen this month that I think we all need to pay attention to, first of all, is the shift from Eastern Standard Time to daylight saving time. This is when we add an hour to our clock at 2 o'clock in the morning. We advance time ahead 1 hour. So we lose an hour of sleep. So the way this goes, the way to easily remember this is we spring forward 1 hour, and then we fall back in the fall 1 hour. That's when we're changing those times so that our day activities will better match what illumination we have from the sun. Now, this is all a human construct that we've put together to help us on this planet get better into sync with what the Earth in its motion around the sun is doing, really. So it's not a natural thing. we've actually changed things a little bit so that we on the planet fit better into the mechanics of the solar system. That is the Earth going around the sun with the changing sunrise and sunset times. We put that together to sync together. Okay, so that happens on Sunday, March 12th. Sunday, March 12th. That's not too long from now. In fact, it's only 10 days away. Can you believe it? We're going to shift time this early in the year already. Well, we've been doing this for a few years now, where we've shifted the time from being the last Sunday in the month of March to being the second Sunday in the month of March. And that's where we are right now. So that's going to happen on March 12th, 2 o'clock in the morning. Don't forget. Following that comes what? The first day of spring. This year, the first day of spring is on March 20th. March 20th, and it happens at 5:24 p.m. in the afternoon. So on March 20th, we get almost the last full day of winter on the 20th, because we don't arrive at spring until 5:24 in the afternoon. Okay, so keep in mind that's what's happening as the Earth is making its way around the sun, as we come to this particular point that we call the vernal equinox, the first day of spring. This is defined as that point in the Earth's orbit around the sun where we have the exact right angle of the Earth's rotational axis toward the sun. And that gives us vernal equinox. At vernal equinox, this is also the time, if you listen to the words here, vernal meaning spring, equinox meaning equal day and equal night. This is the time when we have the same number of hours of daylight as we have darkness. So we reach that crossover point on the first day of spring. Then from that point on through down toward the summer, we have more daylight time than we have nighttime. So you'll see how that comes on as we're moving on. All right, so what else do we have this month? Okay, we have some astronomy events that you'll want to keep track of. Those astronomy events we want to keep track of, very simply, are this. In the western sky, after sunset, whenever we get some clear sky, or hopefully it's clear where you are, 2 bright planets are visible. Those bright planets are Jupiter and Venus. Now, even though Jupiter is the largest planet in the solar system, Venus is closer to us. So Venus will be the very large, bright one. Jupiter will be the smaller one, just adjacent to Venus. Now, tonight is Thursday. Last night, Wednesday night, they were very close to each other. In fact, they were so close, they looked like they were almost one planet together. But tonight, they will have spread out a little bit, and you'll be able to see separation between the 2 planets. Venus will be the brighter one. Jupiter will be the dimmer one. Venus will appear above Jupiter. Jupiter will be below Saturn. On Tuesday night, those positions were reversed. If we could have seen it last night, we would have seen them together. And tonight, we would see them separate again, with Venus above and Jupiter below. This switch in positions is due to the Earth's motion around the sun, along with the motion of Venus around the sun. These 2 planets, Venus and Earth, are traveling around the sun at a much higher rate than Jupiter is. So if we see that change in those positions, that change is due mostly to the motion of the Earth and the motion of Venus around the sun. So we can see that in the evening sky, and as we go through the rest of the spring, we'll be able to watch as the separation begins to increase between those 2 planets, and then they come back together later in the spring and summer. But you can easily see this. No binoculars, no telescope. And you know what it's very much like? It's as if we've lifted the curtain behind the scenes. I'm actually thinking of that scene in The Wizard of Oz, where Dorothy and her companions are in the hall of the Wizard of Oz, and Toto goes over to a curtain, pulls the curtain back, and you can actually see the wizard operating all the machinery that frightens everybody in the wizard's throne room there. Well, this is essentially, in a way, what we're doing. We're actually watching the motion of the planets in their orbit around the sun. So we're seeing some of the celestial mechanics of the solar system as we see these planets appearing to pass each other in the sky. Now, it's not that this is a rare event that's happening. It's always going on. These motions are always taking place. But it's harder to see that motion unless you have planets in proximity to each other, close enough to each other, that you can actually see the relative motion from day to day. And that's where we are right now. So keep an eye out for this the next few days, and hopefully when the sky is clear, you'll be able to catch that. Okay, so that's one thing that's happening. Oh, also, look for the moon to slide past these two planets on March 22nd, March 23rd, and March 24th. Here's what's going to happen. On March 22nd, the moon will be approaching from the western horizon, from low on the western horizon. So the moon will be down below Jupiter. On the 23rd, the moon will take a step past Jupiter up toward Venus. And then on the 24th, the moon will step past Venus. So now you're seeing all kinds of motion happening. Not only is it just the motion of Venus and Jupiter and the Earth, I should make sure I mention, but you're also going to see the moon as it steps through its orbital path day by day. So keep an eye out for those things. It'd be really cool to see. Don't forget to take someone outside with you so you can see this as well. It's really, really great stuff to see on a nice, clear spring evening. Okay, great. All right, super. So that's what to look for in March. And we'll also take a moment in just a bit to talk about the constellations that are available in the night sky. So let's take a break here and see what kind of questions we have. Let's see who else is on board here. Thank you, Linda. We have folks from Pensacola, Florida, from Doylestown, Pennsylvania, from Wayne, Pennsylvania, from Nashua, New Hampshire. Yay, Nashua. I have friends in Nashua. We have folks from Atlanta. We have folks from Buffalo. Hi, Buffalo. I have friends in Buffalo. And wow, check this out. It's my nephew, Maurice Hosendorf in Houston, Texas. Maurice, how you doing? Thanks for joining us. Glad you're on board with us. Hope you enjoyed the program. And also, we have Rashida Aisha from Philadelphia. Thanks for joining us. We're glad you're here. Yep, fabulous.
We have questions.
Maurice, we miss you, man. Give us a call. Say hello. All right, take care. We'll talk to you later. Okay, we do have questions. What do you have, Linda?
Susie would like to know that she is the international time on the moon in the planning stage. Have you heard anything about them having international time on the moon?
Oh, will there be international time on the moon, and is that in a planning stage? Okay, so let's talk about time, particularly on the moon. As I said a little bit earlier, Susie, as it turns out, time is a human construct that we've created to measure the interval between two events. Very simple. Time is what we use to measure the interval between two events, any two events. And again, it's a human construct. So the moon doesn't really have time. Doesn't have time because there are no humans there. It won't have time as we know it until humans get there. The moon simply exists and stuff happens, but there's no one there to count the interval between events, so there's no time. Well, once humans get there, humans will establish time on the moon. But here's the question, actually, Susie. What time would they use? Is there an international time they would use? Probably not. Here's what goes on in space right now. Astronauts in space use time frames that are tied to what their activities are and their home base. I mean, that's the easiest way to say it. So astronauts in space tend to use the time at the place where the mission is being controlled from. So all of the astronauts that are on International Space Station are based in the time in Houston, Texas. That's where Johnson Space Center is, and that's where activities on board International Space Station are controlled. So they keep time or use that time as their main reference. Now, sometimes astronauts use two watches, and they may use two watches because they have a time frame that they're using on board International Space Station that's related to experiments they're doing, work that they're doing on board space station. But they also, again, keep the major time reference to Johnson Space Center in Houston. Now, once we get to the moon, what's going to happen? Well, it's the same kind of thing. The astronauts are going to keep time, probably, most likely, they'll continue using Houston, Texas time as their time reference. But they may also have another time frame that they use to measure their time on the moon, to keep track between events on the moon while they're there. So that's probably what will happen with time. That's a really great question, though. Thanks a lot. Let's see if we have another question. Thanks, Susie.
Okay. Moving on.
Moving on. Okay, no other questions. So, folks, send us your questions. We'd love to hear your questions. All right, let's do this. So, before we jump off into our topic this evening about science fiction books and the science seeds they start from, let's do this. Let's just take a quick peek at what constellations are available in the sky tonight. So, we're going to go to our technical producer, Katie, and Katie is going to do our screen sharing for us. And we're going to go over and take a look at one of my favorite resources for looking at the night sky, and that's the Stellarium Web Online Star Map. So I've sent her the link for this, and she's going to do the switching around for me. And here we go. Fantastic. Hopefully everybody has the star map. So, Katie, here's what you're going to. Okay, you're right there. You can hear me? Great. Okay, fine. Super. This is going to be very interesting because it's like me using remote control. Okay, Katie, here's what we're going to do. First, Katie, at the top of the screen there where it says Stellarium Web, to the left of that, you'll see the three little menu bars there. Just click on that little icon there, the three little bars to the left. Yep, click on that. Great, that opens us up. Okay, folks, here we are. We're looking at the night sky for tonight. Again, if you've been with us before, you know that the time and date are in the lower right corner, and you'll see it's set for tonight a little after 8 p.m. In fact, it's set for 8:09 p.m. right there. Thanks, Katie. That's perfect. And we're looking toward the north. And that's fine, but we'd actually like to look toward the south. So I'm going to ask Katie to click and drag at the cardinal point indicator N, and she's going to pull the sky around so that we're looking toward the south. There we go, Katie. You got it. Just click on that and drag it around. Just go right down to the horizon. That's right. And then just pull to the left or to the right. And that'll do it. There you go. Keep going around to the south. We want to get the south up there. So, folks, what's actually going on while Katie's doing this for us is we're now shifting from the winter sky to the spring sky. And we're coming around. Now we have it set up a little bit like that. And Katie, you're going to give us some horizon by tilting us down so that we're looking down toward the horizon. Yep, you got it. Keep giving us a little bit more of that. Just a little tiny bit more. Excellent. That's great. How nice that is. Fabulous. Okay, so here we are, folks. Here's what we're going to see. So you can see where the moon is, almost in the center of the sky. And Katie, if you'll put your cursor right there on the moon, that'll be great. Thank you very much. Good. Now, you can see where the moon is right there. As I said, waxing gibbous. Oh, by the way, folks, waxing gibbous means that the moon is between first quarter, like the half moon, and full moon. So it's coming up to, it's on its way up to full moon. It's making its way toward there now, okay? Waxing gibbous. So it's just after that first quarter and making its way on up to full. So over the next few days, you'll watch as the illuminated portion of the moon glows. Okay, so now what I'm going to have Katie do for us next is to just show us where the path of the sun, moon, and planets are. And here's how she's going to do that. She's going to start with her cursor on the moon, and then she's going to move to the right until she comes to Mars. Just don't hold the cursor, Katie. Just drag it across. Yeah, you can swing back around again. I told you, folks, this was going to be fun, didn't I?
I love Katie thinks it's fun.
Yeah, right. Linda says she doesn't think Katie thinks it's fun. So what Katie's going to do for us is she's actually going to show us this line that's connecting to the moon to Mars. And we can do it from here, Katie. That's fine. Just go from the moon and come down to Mars. There's Mars right there. And then you're going to extend that line, Katie, all the way down to the horizon where the W is. And you'll see that there's Venus right down there on the horizon. So right down there on the western horizon where the W is, over there to your left. And now, if we were to connect these objects, folks, Venus, right there with Jupiter, by the way, if we stretch that line from Venus up to Mars and up to the moon, what we've done is we've created a line that actually marks the path of the sun, moon, and planets. So that line that marks the path of the sun, moon, and planets has a special name. It's called the ecliptic. It's the ecliptic, and it really marks the equator of the sun and the solar system, if you will. And that's the path along which the sun, moon, and planets travel. So now, just below, if we were to, in this case, if we're looking above Mars, just above Mars, toward the top title bar where it says Stellarium Web, we can see the three stars that are marking the belt of Orion. We're seeing the three stars that are marking the belt of Orion. That's the center of the winter constellation circle that we call the winter circle. And it has a number of constellations in it that are all part of the main part of the winter sky. Just a little bit past them, up beyond them, we'll see back over toward the eastern side of the sky. That's up toward the top of the screen. Over on the east is where we'd find Leo the Lion. And that's the constellation that you'll look for. Now, I should mention to you that this particular resource, this Stellarium Web, this resource is something that you can use on your own computer. It works really well, it's free, and you can use it to help you find your way around the night sky easily. All you have to do is go to your search tool, whatever search engine you use, look for Stellarium Web, and you can then download that or access it because it's a web-based portal. And then you'll have a star map that you can use. And you're going to look for Leo the Lion. And of course, the icons at the bottom of the screen allow you to have either star outlines or art features or anything like that to show you where the constellations are, and you'll be able to find Leo the Lion. That's the main constellation of the spring sky, and that's the one you should concentrate on because just ahead of Leo, toward the west, is where Orion is. And then just behind Leo are the other spring constellations coming up, one of which is Cancer the Crab, and then others following. But here's the cool thing about Leo. With Leo in the center of the sky at 9 p.m., you can look directly above Leo and find the Big Dipper with no difficulty at all. And then you'll have a whole set of constellations that you can use to familiarize you with the spring sky. Okay, Katie, we can stop sharing this now. Thank you very much. Folks, you can use this. And let's see if we have any other questions. Linda, have anything?
Well, Rashida has sent a question earlier, which you kind of sort of talked about. And she said she saw two very bright stars appearing about 1 mile from each other in the east.
Oh.
Are you familiar with that?
Yes, I certainly am. If they were really bright, Rashida, I'm going to ask were they really bright? If they were really bright, then what you were seeing was Jupiter and Venus. These will be the two brightest objects in the sky other than the moon. So if they were really bright, brighter than anything else, they were Jupiter and Venus. And the other thing I'll let you know is where you saw them in the sky, that was the west. So if you're having difficulty figuring out your directions, let's just use those two planets to tell you which directions are which. If you see these two really bright objects in the sky, really bright, brighter than anything else, no twinkle, that's Jupiter, that's Venus, and that's the west you're seeing them in. You won't see them in the east because they rise during the day when the sky is bright enough that you can't see them. You can't see them until the sun sets. So you can only now see them in the western sky. So if you're seeing them, Rashida, you're seeing them in the west. Ah, yes, very good.
Yes, they were bright.
Yes. Okay, Rashida, well, that's what you were seeing.
Okay.
Okay, superb. All right. Now, folks, let's head off and get to our main topic for the evening. Our main topic this evening is science fiction books and the science seeds they start from. Now, as I mentioned to you before, I'm an old school science fiction person who likes space science fiction. And for me, some of the classics are authors from several decades ago. I'm going to ask you to help me if you can add authors that are more current. So let me give you some examples of science fiction authors that have written science fiction books that have a real solid base in science. I'm going to go way back to really early old school here, and I'm going to start with, you ready for this one? This one is Edgar Rice Burroughs.
Oh, yes.
Edgar Rice Burroughs. That's really way back. But Edgar Rice Burroughs wrote a series of stories about Mars, about explorers on Mars. And in his books featuring explorations on Mars, well, what he did was he used the planet and what he knew of the planet from the early 20th century as the basis for his stories. Now, the basis for the story was Mars is a place where the surface is red and you could go visit there and you might be able to interact with the inhabitants there. And there's all sorts of stories about that. But that was the only factual basis because he didn't have very much beyond that. Let me give you another example. How about something like Kim Stanley Robinson's Red Mars, Green Mars, Blue Mars trilogy? This is a series of 3 books that Kim Stanley Robinson wrote about terraforming the planet Mars. Now, terraforming is a concept that means converting a planet that's not like Earth, converting it into a planet that is like Earth. And so for Mars, this is an idea that people have carried for a very long time. How do we convert Mars from the cold, dry, airless world that it is to a planet like Earth that's warm and wet and very pleasant? With the idea being, if you can convert it to Earth, to an Earth-like planet, humans can live there. So the Kim Stanley Robinson series, Red Mars, Green Mars, Blue Mars, is all about going from Mars as we know it to Mars with vegetation to Mars with lots of water, the vegetation being green, the water being blue. How about that? Okay. And one more I really like. How about Larry Niven's Ringworld series? This is a series of books written by this author, Larry Niven, in which he proposes the idea of a series of gigantic panels that are, a gigantic ring of material that surrounds the right type of star. And instead of it being a planet that orbits the star, you have this gigantic ring that orbits the star. And that ring is very much like a planet that's been sort of flattened and stretched out into a ring that completely surrounds the star. Boy, that's a really wild idea. But, the idea is that if you have a star, if you do your construction at just the right distance to match the type of star where you are, then perhaps you can build a habitat where people could live, in an environment like that. It's really wild and way out there. I have a few more, but let's see what you have. Let's find out what books you have. Let's see.
Eric says his favorite book is We Are Legion and We Are Bob by Dennis E. Taylor.
Oh, We Are Legion by Dennis E. Taylor. And does he say what it is, what the science is?
Yeah, it's about probes with 3D printers that can make more 3D printers that could take over the world.
Oh, what a great idea. Probes that use 3D printers to make more 3D printers. I'll bet the probes also are used to make all the materials that are needed to do all your space exploration and things like that. That's a really cool idea. I like that. That's nice. Okay, that certainly is based in science because we're now beginning to see 3D printing emerging in the space exploration field. I'll tell you a quick story about this. I had the opportunity to tour the SpaceX rocket manufacturing plant in just outside of Los Angeles a few years ago. And I got to tell you, folks, it was a really amazing tour because first of all, this place is an enormous building where rocket manufacturing happens. And the way I say it is essentially what they do is they take a big block of titanium, push it in the front door, and then everything that happens inside turns it into a rocket that comes out the back door, right? But here's one of the coolest things I've seen ever. While they have all these areas where the rocket motors are being built and the fairings are being built and everything else is being built, they have a room, not too big, but a room in which they have 3D printing machines so that they can print rocket parts. But wait a minute, they're not printing them out of plastic or paper or something like that. They're actually 3D printing in metal. And they're making components for the rocket engines that have a very convoluted design and structure, perfect for the rocket, but extraordinarily hard to build. You probably couldn't build these any other way efficiently or with the accuracy that they need for rocket motor parts. So they use 3D printing at SpaceX to build rocket motor parts. I think that's pretty cool. Yeah, I think that's really wild. Okay, let's see who else has a book that they like. Anybody else with a book that they like?
Yeah, Alan likes Arthur C. Clarke's book, The Sentinel, which became the basis for the movie 2001: Space Odyssey.
Ah, sure, right. Arthur C. Clarke was a really well-known and prolific science fiction author. I wonder if Alan can tell us what's the science nugget that is part of the story that actually makes it work.
Okay.
And
Well,
while he's doing that, let's see if anybody else has a book.
yeah, well, Nate Ozek says he likes Old Man's War by John Scalzi.
Old Man's War by John Scalzi.
Scalzi.
Scalzi. Okay.
Yeah, he didn't say what it's about.
Okay. Well, maybe while
They're looking for that.
he's getting that together, we
Susie
can.
likes The Martian.
Oh, The Martian is a really wonderful one. Susie, thank you very much. That's a really good one. The Martian. Now, everybody remembers The Martian from the movie. Everybody saw the movie. And what's the one thing that sticks out in everybody's brain about the movie? Linda, do you remember? I'll bet everybody else remembers. Yes. What did Mark use for fertilizer to grow potatoes on Mars? Yes, everybody remembers. Yes, he used his own poop. That's right. Yes, he used his own poop as fertilizer. And you know what? Guess what? Many people were asking, is that real? Could that actually be true? And you know what? Actually, it is. And NASA has done the work to prove that you actually could use human waste as fertilizer to grow potatoes or vegetables in a soil like Mars. So that really is a nugget of truth in there. But the rest of the nugget of truth in The Martian itself. Oh, by the way, The Martian was written by author Andy Weir. We all are most familiar with it by the movie that we've seen entitled The Martian. But NASA did all the work to figure that out. The rest of the science about Mars is humans being able to explore and wrapping as much real science as they possibly could into that story to make it as realistic as possible. So that was pretty good.
Have you heard of Stranger in a Strange Land by Jeanlin Line? Jeinlein.
Oh, Stranger in a Strange Land by Robert Heinlein. Of
Heinlein.
course, sure. Stranger in a Strange Land. That's a really well-known series as well. There were several books in that series, and this again is a story about Martians and life on Mars. With the basic science nugget being the environment of Mars that the folks who live there had to work their way around. What's another one? Let me give you another one that I have from my series here. Let me see. We talked about Larry Niven's Ring World. How about Isaac Asimov's? This is not a space one, but we'll use it anyway. Isaac Asimov's Robot series. Remember the Robot series? Yeah, they were stories that were all about the science of robotics. And in fact, when you look back at the stories, Isaac Asimov had a series of laws that he called the laws of robotics. And in fact, the laws of robotics that were created by Isaac Asimov for these stories back in the 1950s and 60s are the same laws of robotics that are still being used today for how robots would interact with people. And if you go back and take a look at the robot series and look up these robot laws, you'll find that they really are very interesting, and that it looks like Isaac Asimov was very far ahead of his time when he talked about how robots should interact with people. Any others? Any other ideas? Other books?
Yeah, Eric says he likes Leviathan Wakes by James S.A. Corey because it became the show The Expanse.
Oh, wow. That's a really good one. Now, what was that one again? It was
Leviathan Wakes by James S.A. Corey.
Leviathan Wakes by James S.A. Corey. Oh, thank you very much. That's a good one because, as you mentioned, it's the source for the television program The Expanse. which is a modern day science fiction story about space exploration that really is engaging. And a lot of people have watched that series and have said great things about it. I watched it and thought it was fantastic. So you're right. But the cool thing about that, I think, for as far as the connection of science in that, and you can tell me if you agree with this, is that they represented the habitation. I'm sorry, how should I say it? They represented humans in the solar system as explorers, as having, occupied Earth, Mars, and other places in the solar system in the asteroid belt. And I thought they did a really great job of that, of sort of like normalizing space life to the point where there was politics and factions and all sorts of black market trade and things like that going on. And that was really, really well done. So I like that. Any others? What else? What other ones do you have?
Susie likes Artemis by Andy Weir.
Oh, Artemis by Andy Weir. Is that so, Susie? Is that his new one, Beyond the Martian? Artemis by Andy Weir. We'd love to know about that one, and we can tell everybody about that too. So don't forget, folks, if you're listening into this, you can pick up some new titles that you might want to try to get your hands on for reading. Sure, that'd be cool.
And by the way, the Old Man, a book that Nate recommended.
Yes.
It's about older Earthlings who volunteer to join the space army. So there's lots of space travel and nanotechnology.
Whoa. Okay. So that's Old Man's War. And Nate Ozek provided that one. That's really interesting. Okay. Older Earthlings volunteer to join a space army. Okay. Is Bruce Willis involved in that in any way, I wonder?
No.
Okay. Thank you for that reminder. Linda just gave me a reminder about one of my favorite space movies. I don't think it was ever a book, but one of my favorite space movies that does have a nugget of science content in it, and that is The Fifth Element. What can I say? One of my favorites. Okay. But I really like it, partially because of how it depicts the future. And the one piece of science I think is really interesting in it is the idea of the space hotel. And in this one, there's thank you, Linda. Space tourism, how space tourism is represented by a sort of space cruise ship, if you will, called Phlogiston Paradise, that is a spacecraft shaped like a cruise ship. And you can't get any more literal than that. But I still think it was kind of fun, with an idea that's probably going to come to fruition at some point in the not too distant future. Okay, so here's another one that I really like. This is going to go back to, and this is actually a children's book written by an author named Madeleine L'Engle. And this book is called A Wrinkle in Time. And if you haven't read A Wrinkle in Time, if you like science fiction, maybe even if you don't like science fiction, but if you like mathematics, I really recommend you try out Madeleine L'Engle's A Wrinkle in Time. The science nugget that goes into this is the idea of being able to traverse very large expanses of space using a method that really is based in a future of physics, in which, in this book, as it's talked about, this ability to traverse large volumes of space happens by folding space in on itself so that you bring one portion of space closer to the portion of space where you are, so that you can make a short trip from where you are to this other place by folding space, creating a wrinkle in time that folds the fabric of space to make two parts of the fabric come closer together. Are we doing this today? No, we're not doing this today. Is this a way far out mathematical possibility? Theoretically speaking, it is way out there, but it's an interesting concept that relates to how we understand the fabric of space-time. And this is an author talking about the fabric of space-time being folded back in the 1960s. So that makes it really interesting. So take that one on. That's a really cool one too, a cool one to investigate too. Let's see. What else do I have from my batch of books and things? And then we'll find out what you have.
Okay.
So you know what? I'm going to take a step. I'm going to take a little step away from books for just a second. I hope you'll allow me to do this, Katie, because I want to get this one in. Christopher Nolan, the producer, created a film a few years ago called Interstellar. Interstellar. A lot of people poo-pooed this because they didn't like they thought maybe the science was not exactly accurate. And I argued against that because this program wasn't really about the science, although I believe they represented the science really well. And here we're talking about space explorers traveling out to the edge of a black hole to alter time to fix something back on Earth that's going tremendously wrong. And you know what? I feel like the depiction that was given in the film was done very, very well, given the limitations of what you can do in film, trying to represent the distortion of space-time that you would find near a black hole. If you haven't seen that, I highly recommend it. Okay, who else has a book?
Okay, first of all, we got to give a shout out to Mike Ragan because for Fifth Element, one of his favorite lines is the multi-pass.
So, Mike, I've just heard that one of your favorite passages from Fifth Element is the multi-pass. And I got to tell you, thank you very much for that, because I have really glommed onto that particular saying. And it's happened more than once that I've held up my Franklin Institute ID and said, Lilo Dallas multipass. So for those of you that are into this, you know what we're talking about. So thanks a lot for that. I appreciate that, Mike. Yeah, that's really great.
Oh, man.
Yeah, that's fun. What else do we have, Linda?
Well, Rashida would like to know, is the multiverse real?
Rashida, that's a great question. She wants to know if the multiverse is real. Well, theoretically, we have this wonderful theoretical construct of a multi-universe situation here where we are one of those universes and there are many others. And it's hard for us to say if it's real or not because we don't have very much information. I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. We have no information from outside of our own universe. And I've just piled a bunch of things in there together. For example, we have no information from outside our universe. What am I talking about? Outside our universe. It's hard for us to even sort of consider what that means to say outside our universe. That suggests that our universe is inside a larger volume. We've already blown everybody's mind with this, Rashida, but we can at least point in this direction. It's beginning to look like, Rashida, that for our universe to have been created in the way that theoreticians are suggesting it was created, through what we call a Big Bang sort of process of a super expansion of a very tiny region in space that was all of the universe collapsed down into a little tiny point that suddenly began to expand and became the universe as we see it now. Well, theoretically, if that actually did happen, then it's now being suggested that we do live in a multiverse situation. But again, we have no proof of this. So it's very difficult for us to say that, yes, multiverses exist. So we can think about it, and we can think about it some more. And hopefully maybe the career path you're on, Rashida, is going to help us get to the bottom of that question at some point. All right, Linda, what else do we have?
Okay, I know this is stepping off from Sci-Fi, but maybe we want to give a shout out.
Oh, yes, folks. I do have an interesting book that's not science fiction at all. You may recall that I have a good friend who is an astrophysicist, Hakeem Oluseyi. Hakeem Oluseyi is an astrophysicist, Florida Institute of Technology, if I'm not mistaken, who is a really, truly brilliant scientist who's had an extraordinary journey to become an astrophysicist. He's recently released a book called A Quantum Life, My Unlikely Journey from the Street to the Stars. And I highly recommend this book because if you've ever thought that you couldn't get someplace because of impediments that have happened in your life earlier, and there's just no pathway for you to get there, Hakeem's book outlines an incredible story of what looks like there's no way for him to get to where he is, to getting to the place where he is now, where he has done a tremendous amount of work for NASA, a tremendous amount of work for presidential panels on space and space exploration and science and physics. He's just a monumental guy, and you can catch him on a lot of different television programs. So I'm gonna suggest you try out that book. But let's go back to science fiction and see what else we have.
Paula would like to know, do you consider Jules Verne a sci-fi author?
Paula, you're asking if I consider Jules Verne a sci-fi author. Yes, I do consider Jules Verne a sci-fi author. You know, I started out saying that I'm a science fiction guy, that the kind of science fiction I like is related to space and space exploration. But that's not the only realm in which science fiction applies. So it can cross a lot of different topic areas. It's just science fiction, and that does not necessarily have to mean space and aliens and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I'm with Jules Verne as a science fiction author. So I'm good with that. Jules Verne, Journey to the Center of the Earth. There's a science fiction story about traveling inside the Earth to get to the center of the Earth. And that certainly is science fiction for sure. So yeah, I'm good with that. All right. Okay, let's see. What else do I have on my list? Did I mention Isaac Asimov's Foundation trilogy? The Foundation trilogy that included the book Foundation, the second book, Foundation and Empire, and the third book, I'm sorry, the first book is Foundation, the second book is Foundation and Empire, and the third book is Second Foundation. What a powerful series that is. But here's the science around that I think is really fascinating. This is a story that is based on what's known as the Galactic Encyclopedia, a compendium of information about the development of human exploration and human exploits throughout the galaxy and throughout the universe, actually. And so this is a sort of like a historical look back at how the empires grew and fell through the science work of a particular scientist who could predict what was going to happen. And these three books are really fascinating. And I'll give you a little snapshot of a science piece that came out of that I thought was really fascinating. In the very first book, Foundation, it starts out with a young woman who wants to become a journalist. And so she's writing a paper for a journalism class. Now, this is in the early 1950s. And what instrument is she using? She's using a typewriter that she can dictate to, that will type everything she says right onto a document. And of course, the story talks about how she makes mistakes, how she has to go back and correct them. This is way before the IBM Selectric typewriter and any other kind of mechanized typewriter sort of device, electric typewriter device. This is way before that. And of course, now we think about dictating using computers as if it's always been around. But I thought that was an interesting view from this book from the 1960s. So there are lots and lots and lots of really great science fiction books out there that have a really strong basis in science. And you know, this is a really good point for me to bring up a really interesting aspect about this. I often ask the question, what has come first in science and science fiction, or technology, advancing technology and science fiction? Is it science fiction that dreams up what new technologies we want to see, and then someone does the work of actually creating that reality? Or is it that technologies spawn science fiction? So is art imitating life, or is life imitating art? Which way does it go? What has come first, the science or the fiction? Or is it the fiction that creates the science that comes? Here's a very interesting aspect of that. If you really look closely at the phenomenon of unidentified aerial phenomenon, if you look back at all of the history of all of the reports that have ever been made or recorded about unidentified aerial phenomenon, one thing you'll notice is that prior to the introduction of the jet aircraft, there are no recorded instances of high performance flying craft that move at extraordinarily high rates of speed or make very, very sharp turns or directional changes that we would consider today to be miraculous. None of that ever showed up before the introduction of the jet aircraft. So, what's happened? Is it that jet aircraft, the introduction of jet aircraft, has introduced the concept of a flying device that can move at extraordinarily high rates of speeds and change direction at incredibly high rates of speed? Or has it come the other way around? So that's just one instance. And it's always a great thing to sort of think about and wonder about when you're reading science fiction or when you're looking at technology. What was it that spurred the development of either one of those going in one direction or another? Okay, so hopefully with this discussion, you have rekindled your interest in reading science fiction of some type or another. There's so much incredible science fiction out there. We've only touched on a very, very small sampling of what's available for anyone to read. And you know what? This is a great way for you to allow your imagination to run free about what the possibilities are for space exploration or any other aspect of science fiction that you might be interested in. And that might also include fantasy as well. So let your imagination run free and chase down some of these books and do some reading in this because it's just fun to do. So we've mentioned a few books here. Hopefully you'll think of some others. And hopefully this has been a fun way for you to think about astronomy and space exploration, is by thinking about science fiction. I know it's been a lot of fun for me. I see one more thing here that says, would the original Star Trek be the fiction coming first? That's a really great question, Yvette. But if you think about it, maybe it is. It depends. If somebody can finally invent warp drive, Yvette, then maybe we will be able to tie Star Trek to that coming of our ability to travel through space really quickly.
And the tricorder.
Oh, yes. And let's not forget the tricorder as well. Yeah, that'll be the medical piece. Okay, folks, so we've come around to the end of the program. Thanks for joining us this evening. We hope you've had a great time. Don't forget to go out and take a look at the night sky. Those two planets are going to be beautiful once the sky clears. Venus and Jupiter in the west after sunset. Don't forget the moon overhead later this month on the 22nd, 23rd, and the 24th over on the west after sunset. The moon is going to slide past those three planets. Please take some folks out with you to enjoy the night sky. You'll really enjoy it, and they will enjoy it too. Last thing I'll tell you about that, as you see the separation between Venus and Jupiter, do not forget, please, that you are observing a separation of nearly well over 400 million miles between Venus and Jupiter. Venus is our next closest neighbor planet to us. Jupiter is the largest planet in the solar system, and it is way out there. So that spacing you see is really enormous, even though it looks really close in the sky. So our topic next month is astronomy's biggest myths. What are the biggest myths we know of in astronomy? We're going to talk about what some of those are, and we're going to ask you if you know of some big myths too. So we're going to ask you to join us next month. We'll be back on the first Thursday night of the month, and we'll tell you all about what's available in the night sky. For a more in-depth look into the wonders of the universe, please check out my video cast, A Practical Guide to the Universe, found at beyond.fi.edu. That's beyond.fi.edu, my video cast of A Practical Guide to the Cosmos. But be sure to step outside, look up, and explore the night sky. Folks, we'll see you next month. Thanks for joining us. Have a great month of March. So long.